In this movie we're going to create a standard primitive, and then we're going to use the transform tools on the object. So to create a standard primitive, the first thing you need to do is go over to your command panel, and underneath create you have geometry, and we're going to start off with something, one of these guys in here. So let's start off with a cylinder. Okay, I'm going to click the cylinder. You'll notice that everything in here is has opened up. These parameters, drop down boxes, etc. Don't worry about it for now. Basically go into your grid down here in your perspective view. You'll notice also that I have smooth and highlights ticked, so you can see the edged faces in the objects that I'm creating. Okay, so click and drag out, holding your left mouse button down, the bottom or the radius of your cylinder. Let go of your left mouse button, drag it up, and when you're happy with the height, click. And that's how easy it is to create an object. Now, while you've got that object created, you'll notice that this panel here is you can see it basically. So that means that I haven't clicked off that object because I'm still in the creation mode of this object. I can play with some of these tools that are in here. So as you'll see at the top here, you'll see that it says name and color, so you can actually change the color here of the object. So you can come in here and call it whatever it is. You can actually change the color that it's represented in too by hitting the little color guy, and we'll change it to a nice purple. You can create the object straight from here if you want to, and you can create it from the edge or the center. And if you go into this little plus sign here, it opens up a drop down menu here, and this is where you can actually create it and tell it how high it is and everything, and just hit create and tick where you want it, it will create it. But I actually like the manual way to create it. I'll just close that up and see like it usually is. Now underneath that you see that you've got the radius and you have a spinner. So the spinner, you can change the radius. All spinners in Max can be right clicked to 0 if you wanted to, but you wouldn't want to 0 it because then you wouldn't have any radius. Height segments, this is why I've got the edged faces on, so you see the segments. You can see that there's height segments in there, so we can change how many segments there are on the side, and that just gives you added geometry that you can edit later on. Cap segments, you'll see that there's 5 there at the top. We can change that to say 3, so there's 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, 2 cap segments there now, 1, 2, and there's 3, 4, etc. And the sides here, you can at the moment it's 18. You can change that, and you can change it quite dramatically, so you can actually change them to almost a box if you wanted to. So there you go. So most of these shapes you can do things like this. You can change it, and they drag out with the left mouse button down, and there's a few little movements to create it, so have a go at checking them all out. Now this is just standard primitives we're looking at the moment, but anyway, I'll keep going. You also, when you're doing it, you can put slice on, and you can actually get a piece of pie basically. So you can have a little section of it, like a piece of cheese perhaps. Yep. So there's some little tools in there while you're creating it that you can use in the parameters here. So if I click off it, or deselect everything, using Q on the keyboard is a good way of deselecting, getting out of that sort of stuff. You'll notice if I click over here somewhere, and then I click back on the mouse onto the piece of cheese again, you'll notice that it's actually the parameters have disappeared. Well, that's when the modifier panel comes into act, and you come into the modifier panel, which is the next one along from create in the command panel. Click on that, and then you'll see that the parameters are back in here again. Now you use the modifier panel quite a lot with shapes. Again, I can come back here and change this shape after I've created it, so that's kind of cool. Change the sides, how much of a slice we've made it, so I can do all that still, all in the modify panel. And in the modify panel, you also would you make sure that you notice is this here is what we call the stack, and at the moment it says cylinder. That can change because we could have modifiers on it, etc. There's a modifier list here which we'll play with in later movies. So cylinder, and this is a stack, so keep in mind this is a stack here, and anything that you put onto this shape will turn in the stack, kind of like layers. Okay, now the main shortcut keys that you use for transforming and moving objects around is basically on your keyboard is Q, W, E and R. Q is kind of like deactivate, or basically just select, get ready to select something, so that's why it helped me deactivate when I was creating stuff here. W is actually move, so and you get a little gizmo, and I want to show you the gizmo very quickly here. So the gizmo, you can move it in the Z by left clicking the Z axis, you can move it in the X axis, and you can move it in the Y axis. You can also, with the gizmo, select in between, so it just moves it in that particular plane. I'll move out so you can see it. So if I hit that plane, you can see those little planes there. I hit one that I share, so this guy here, it will only move it in that plane. So it sort of shares between the two planes. So that gizmo works a bit like that. So there's one there, you see you can do it this side too. Okay. If you move right along to the E, which is the rotate button, it has the same type of thing. It has a gizmo, and you can rotate it in a particular direction, and it's actually color coded as well, you'll see. So that gizmo can be used like that. Yeah, you can sort of share rotations too there. And you can, then if you go to the next guy, which is the scale tool, which is the R on the keyboard, the scale tool works a bit like all the others. You can scale it out or stretch it out on the Z. You can stretch it out on the X or the Y. Okay, and again you can share. Now to scale it uniformly, you would scale it from the center, where that triangle all lights up like that. That's a uniform scale. To scale it on the Y and the Z, you hover in here on that plane there and click in there, and that scales it on that direction. And the same, you know, if you wanted to do it on that plane there. To put all these things back in where they should be, if you actually right click the tool, so if you right click the scale tool works at 100%. So if you right click and put in X 100, Y 100, and Z 100, and I'm not doing it right, I'll go there, I'll go here, and there, and you'll see that we'll actually hit enter and it's scaled back to what it was. Well, that works with the move and the transform tool and the rotate tool as well.